Hey, what's going on? It's Doug Cunnington here, and welcome to The Doug Show. In this episode, I talked to Bryon Brewer of Human Proof Designs. Bryon is a very interesting guy for a few reasons. So number one, he bought Human Proof Designs, which is cool all on its own, right? So if you're not aware, Dom Wells, a friend of mine, he sold Human Proof Designs. He created, and he's the founder of Human Proof. Bryon's the new, sheriff in town here. The cool thing, one of the many cool things, is Bryon and I have a very similar background in like consulting and just IT and the whole corporate world that we escaped in very different ways. So this discussion was pretty awesome. We talk about like Bryon's history in IT. We talk about how he figured out that he like maybe wanted to buy an online business like Human Proof Designs, and kind of new things that are coming up for HPD. So it's a great discussion. I'm gonna probably have Bryon on and other folks from the crew at HPD on a few more times. Great folks over there, and they do good work. If you're unfamiliar, you should check out the site in general. There's a lot of good information. They have a podcast, and they have a bunch of services and stuff. So we talk about those sort of things, and I'm going to pause for a second because I want to let you know, if you're new to the channel, you should have a look at some of the other videos. If you like what you see, please do subscribe. Without further ado, we're going to get to the interview with Bryon Brewer of Human Proof Designs. Hey, what's going on? It's Doug Cunnington here, and I'm with Bryon Brewer of Human Proof Designs. How are you today, Bryon?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
And you and I met probably like a month or so ago, and it was a little unexpected. I was, pinging some of my friends over at Human Proof Designs, and then I found out there was this guy, Bryon, doing some stuff, and I didn't know you. So can you just give a little intro on what you're doing at Human Proof and just a high level of your background a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So yes, I started with Human Proof Designs back in April of this year. So I am the new owner of Human Proof Designs. I started talking with Dom Wells, that many of your viewers, I'm sure, know or have heard of back last year, and became very interested in the business. So took that on, big project, kind of started in April. So been there right at 3 months now. So a little bit about me. So I live outside of Dallas, Texas, and I have 4 kids. So stay pretty busy with them, but 4 kids and a wife, and then we spend a lot of time here in Dallas doing all kinds of activities with the kids. They're in swim team right now, and then we spend most of our summers up at Lake Texoma, which is right around the Oklahoma border. We have a lake house up there, so we tend to stay up there in the summers and then back down in Dallas for the winters. Let's see, a couple other things about me. I went to school at LSU and graduated from there, and then went and got my master's degree at the University of Texas, and have been involved in kind of technology field, consulting, development, online marketing for about 20 years now.
Very cool. Very cool. And I worked in Dallas for maybe like 6 months on a project back when I was consulting as well. Great town, really good barbecue, of course, all through the state, to be honest with you. But yeah, I really like Dallas. It was similar in a lot of ways to Atlanta, just, better barbecue, I would say. So
yeah. Well, it's good to visit down here in the spring, winter time. So you come down here in summer, you're going to bake quite a bit.
Yeah. Funny thing, well, 2 funny things. I talk about the weather all the time. People make me aware of that. But I was there in like the summer of 2006, which you may not remember since it's been 13 years ago. But it was very warm that summer, and it didn't rain much. And I know you guys have, it's like droughts or flooding kind of thing going on, like up and down. So I was there during a very hot summer, and I was like, it hasn't rained in like the whole time I've been here. It's crazy. So anyway, I found it very interesting that you and I have a pretty similar background. So you were doing like IT kind of stuff and some consulting. Can you talk a little bit about that? Obviously, some of it's confidential, and that's how it works. But can you give us like a background, like how your trajectory took you to where you are now?
Yeah, sure. So when I graduated college, I started out just as a developer, writing applications in several different technologies. Back then, we were writing in something called Cold Fusion for a while. And originally, one of the big jobs that I started with was up in Virginia. And you may have heard like autotrader.com and trucktrader.com, rvtrader.com, atvtrader.com, all of those. So they had magazines out there at the 7-Elevens everywhere, but they needed an online presence. And that's really when the internet, 20 years ago, was really everybody's getting websites and starting to do online commerce. So we built those sites from the ground up and got those up and running, which was really exciting back then. It was a little scary because we would have different parts of the year when those sites would get lots of traffic, and they would be 6 o'clock in the evening and the sites would just crash because of the load. And so we were frantic. We would work and work and work trying to figure out how do we reduce the loads on that database? How do we cache pages? All these techniques that we hadn't really figured out very well back then. But that's how I got started, really, was kind of developing software and developing online applications for companies, mostly hands-on programming back then. And then I kind of moved into project management. I know you have your PMP. I kind of started running and managing software development teams and helping companies, build out big projects like that. Got my PMP certification and did that for quite a number of years, which I loved doing. It was a lot of a challenge, but I decided I had gotten into consulting at that time, working for Accenture and several of the big consulting firms here in the United States, and decided, what, the bill rate they bill me out, and I make a little sliver of that. I could go off and do that on my own. And so that's what I did. I started up my own company called Project Consults. This was about 12 years ago that I did that. And it's really interesting because my work now with human proof designs, a lot of where we see success is when people focus on really specific niches that they can target and gain a lot of traction with. And that's a very similar approach that I took when I started at Project Consults, because I could have tried to go out there and be an Accenture and like focus on any kind of general consulting, business IT consulting you want. But what I did was I had a lot of expertise in a tool called TFS, Team Foundation Server, which was a Microsoft application lifecycle management tool. And so I put Google AdWords out there running for, hey, you need TFS consulting, because there's not very many people that do it at all, as well as Cold Fusion. So by then, 8-9 years later, Cold Fusion had kind of died out. Like it didn't get adopted as much, but there was a lot of companies who jumped on it when it was popular, and now they couldn't find anybody to do it. And so that was a niche as well. So I put Google AdWords out there, and I started getting calls, and I started getting emails on my contact form on my website where people are like, I can't find anybody. Is this something you do? I saw clicked on your ad on Google. And so I would, and with that, the consulting gigs like that, I was talking about, I might go and work for somebody for a month, and that might be a $10,000 project. And I just spent $100 that month on Google AdWords. So the return was huge on that. And I got way more work than I could handle just by targeting real carefully a couple of technologies that I knew well, and really got my start on my own 12 years ago doing that.
Wow. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I was wondering about that because I know and a lot of other people that are either that are consultants and worked at one of the big five or whatever, like however many there are now. And it's like, we know like we're being billed out at like some crazy amount, and we imagine, hey, we can do that. But I'm like, I couldn't connect the dots to like start my own consulting company. And then honestly, I didn't have a strong enough network or reputation to do it. But I have some friends that maybe they've been working at Accenture or some other company for like a decade or more. And I'm like, they could totally go somewhere else. They have enough people that they know, and they can like get like one-on-one gigs, cut all the fat, all the waste in those big companies. So were there any like portions or any times where you were like, oh, I'm not sure if this is going to work, or was it pretty quick with the AdWords model there?
Well, it's a funny story because the kind of the week that I decided that I was going to start up my company and I was going to leave is I got a call just through a contact. I got a call from a colleague who said, hey, there's somebody who needs some TFS work. I don't know if you're available. And I was like, well, actually, I was thinking about quitting my job. And so, yeah, maybe I could do that as an independent, freelancer. And so they offered me this position to help them up in Indianapolis for like 6 months, doing TFS work. I thought that was great. This would get me on my start of starting my own company. I could get my AdWords out there and do all that. Well, I put in my notice and quit my job. And then like a day later, the guy who gave me that gig, he called and said, we changed our mind. So now I had no job and nothing lined up. So I really doubted my decision to go out on my own at that moment. It was a pretty frantic moment there. And so I said, you know what, I'll just live with it. I can find something, over the next couple of months and I'll make it. But luckily, then he called me back like another day later and said, oh, actually, we do want you to come. And so that's what started my independent career. Basically was that, but it was scary. It was jumping out on your own, and it's you never know what's going to happen, and you're kind of afraid if business is going to come, and so you don't do it. But I'm glad I did it because it's the best thing I ever did. I have it's financially like what I was making as a consultant and what I can do today, especially once I started to get more business and I was able to hire some contractors to help me on projects. And then I'm making the bill rate that Accenture was making on those guys and I'm doing nothing. Then it really started to snowball and really started to get great for me. So really, I'm glad I did it. I have a twin brother, and he's been working at a company for many, many years, and he just left his company about 3 months ago and started on his own. And he is doing custom woodwork furniture. He's like builds, these magnificent pieces of woodwork and for hotels and individuals, residents all over Dallas. And he has got more work than he can handle. And he was so nervous. He'd been for 10 years staying me on my own. Was so nervous about doing that. He did it, and 3 months in, he's got more work than he can even handle. So
wow. And he's probably making it all by hand. Like there's no mass production, right, in this situation.
Oh yeah, no, it's all handmade. He's got a big workshop, and yeah, it does all that basically custom, very highly custom wood furniture. So
interesting. Very interesting. And do you remember like how it felt? I know it's going back 12 years, but like when you realize like this is working and it's so much better than what I was doing before, how did that feel?
Oh yeah, it's you just number one, you get to choose what you're going to do, right? So if you don't like a project or you don't want to do that type of work, then you don't have to, and so it gives you a lot of freedom. And that's one thing that I really liked just from the very start is I got to kind of choose what I was going to do. One thing that I always liked doing was doing training and helping people learn. And so I kind of built kind of that niche around training. And so what I did there was I start advertising classes, and of course it takes a lot of time to write curriculum and build, well, how long it takes to write good curriculum and classes. And so I decided to partner with a training company, several training companies actually, that had curriculum. And I said, I'll go teach it and I'll sell it. I just need the curriculum. And that's what I did for a while. And then I kind of got smart and I realized that I can go teach the classes and do all this work, but I worked out a deal with them, kind of an affiliate model, commission model, where I said, I can go out there and I can sell the classes, which I'm doing anyway, but I'll have somebody else teach it, or I'll let my training partner find an instructor for it. I'll just sell it. And so then I got online and started doing a lot of email marketing. So I would find conferences that had happened in Dallas or in Philadelphia or just wherever around the country of people like in that industry, like an industry related conference. And I would go grab like their speaker list and their attendee list and everything I could, get all these emails and all that industry. And then I'd start emailing these folks and advertising my classes. And before you know it, I would get 10 people in a class. You have to keep in mind, IT classes tend to be expensive. So these would be like, $1,800 classes. And I would make a 40% commission for every student I sold into those. So I'd sell 10 people, 15 people into a class. And really, I would build up a list of, say, in the Dallas market, 20,000 emails. And I'd blast that out. And I only needed like 1/10 of 1% of 20,000 people to get 10 or 15 people is all I needed into a class. And I would make a good $15,000 in a week. And I didn't even have to teach the class. I just sat at home and did it. And so I did that. I did my consulting for quite a number of years. And then I kind of got into the training world and started doing that and was basically selling classes. And then I found that what I did in Dallas, how many more markets are there like that, where I could do that all across the country? So I just basically replicated what I was doing in Dallas and got an Austin email list going and a Houston email list going and a Denver email list going. And then I would start selling classes that were offered in those markets. And I would build out I'd have a training website, and then I would build out a local subdomain, denver.projectconsults.com, Houston, so forth. And I'd offer the classes there, have the sign up. I'd market it via email, a little bit of AdWords, but it's real competitive. It's really tricky. Like doing consulting, I could do AdWords and make money at it. And those are big ticket things, But then when I got into training, it was a lot more competitive. And so I couldn't really make a lot of profit there. But email marketing was a key thing that I was able to do there, and then replicate that around the country into all the different markets and be able to sell those classes. So lots of different ways, I kind of was able to kind of own what I did and what I decided to do.
Interesting. And sounds like, similar to me, you didn't really have much of a marketing or business background from your university years. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I have a finance degree and then an MBA. So I have kind of the business side, technology and development programming. You think, well, computer science, but no, I always did programming and technology work, but I really had a business background.
Oh, okay. So you got a big leg up. Okay, got it. Now, that said, when did you get your MBA and the finance specialization and stuff? Was that all? Actually, I'll just leave it open ended. When did that happen?
Yeah, so I graduated originally from LSU in 1999, and then I spent a couple of years out there working started doing consulting for a local consulting firm, and then went and got my MBA. So probably about 5 years, 6 years after my bachelor's, I got into and that took several years to do, but I think it's good to have a couple of years of experience out there in the field, out there in the industry, So then I went back and got the MBA, but that was way before I started up my own company and working on my own.
Okay, cool. And that is 100% my observation too, because I remember when I graduated and got a job, there were a handful of people that got MBAs, and they were right out of undergrad, got their MBA, and then they showed up with us, and basically they were the same as everyone else, right? They had no additional experience. They were just they took some more classes and paid whatever, $150,000 more or something like that. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Interesting. So, okay. And then when you got your MBA, were you thinking, all right, this is just what people do? After you do some consulting, a lot of other people are doing that. Or were you thinking entrepreneurship in the long run?
Well, I don't know if I was thinking about it then. I felt probably like a lot of folks do, that an MBA is kind of your ticket to higher pay, especially in consulting, because when you're on the bench and a company, your consulting firm wants to present you to a potential client, it's great to have titles and certifications and degrees behind your name. So that's probably one of the big drivers, at least in the consulting industry, is one of the reasons I went back and got my MBA. And the University of Texas is great, but they do have kind of a specialty degrees in entrepreneurship, which if I had to do it over again, that would have been more practical and probably saved me a lot of headache over the years and things that I learned on my own. But I didn't think about it then. But it's certainly, I think those entrepreneur-related business degrees or MBAs have a lot of value.
Sure. For sure. Now, shifting gears a little bit, I'm interested why you were transitioning to different business models as you go, and you're continuing to do that. I have some theories, why I would do it, but I'm curious because it sounded like you had a pretty successful consulting gig, and then your own consulting gig, and then successful training, and now you have, human proof design. So, What's going on?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think it's a mixture of a couple of things. One is, consulting is great for a lot of people. It's challenging, and every few months you get to go work on a new project, so you're not kind of stuck working on the same thing over and over. So I've always thrived on having new challenges, and so consulting was great for me. I didn't ever really like kind of the politics that go on inside of companies. And as a consultant, you didn't get involved in politics. You were there to do a job. And so you didn't have to worry about that. But you also only get paid when you're working. It's an hourly type thing. And so if you're not working with a client, then you're not getting paid. So there's kind of a limit to your income potential there. Certainly, you may look at hiring contractors and things, but, what happens is your margins start getting eat up when you have someone sit on the bench for 2 months while you're transitioning to another project or whatever. So even that can be a challenge. And so it's a hard business to necessarily run. So I really wanted to get into something that had, more potential, as well as maybe less work, hopefully. And so that's why I got into, transitioned more into the marketing of training classes. I liked to do the training, but training to me was even more difficult than consulting, because at least in consulting, you can sit and study a problem or work on software or something on your own. When you're teaching, you're 100% on that whole day, and standing in front of a class. and working with those students. And so you feel drained at the end of the day. But when you're marketing and you're selling the classes, like I was doing, I could make quite a bit of money. And it's nothing is free in this world. It still required a lot of work, but there was a lot of income potential. I didn't have to travel as much doing consulting or training. And so that was good, especially, starting a family and having kids. That was a big plus to me. So that's why I got into that. The other part of the other reason is I just like something different, and I'm always, looking for another challenge. What's next? And so that's another reason I did that.
Got it. Yep. And I think probably a lot of people in the audience can appreciate the fact of starting something new. It's very exciting to learn like a whole new set of skills and like be in that beginner's sort of mindset where you're making some mistakes and you don't know like how naive you are, like when you're getting into something new, and then you learn more and then things are good again. So that's very, very cool. Now, did you have any specific like challenges as you were transitioning from one to the other, or it was like pretty easy, like jump off points?
Well, yeah, it's not easy when you start something new. When I moved from consulting into doing training, one thing that helped was, of course, licensing content from other companies, but eventually I, started to develop my own content, and then there's a huge amount of investment of time to do that. And there's just a lot to figure out as far as, how, like in that industry, how many days do you sell something for? Do you do a 2-day class or a 3-day class? Back then we were kind of, everything was in classroom, and then we started doing virtual classes. And so then that's a whole nother challenge of how to do virtual classes and keep people engaged. And so there's a learning curve to trying anything new. And then when you get into online marketing, especially email marketing, that's a whole nother challenge. This was, 9 years ago or so. And so it was a little bit easier then, but still you had to be careful about your email reputation. You had to be careful about how many bounce backs you got, how many spam reports you got, what your open rates were, all of those things. Sender Scorer is a real popular site to go out and check your reputation. And so just learning everything about that, because I started out, I got kicked off more than one email company trying to learn this process. And so you feel like, you're defeated and that you're not going to figure this out, but you slowly get better at it. And then it turns into like a machine. You got it down to a science, and that's where it gets easier.
Gotcha. And what'd you do, if you remember, to get kicked off that email provider there?
Yeah, so today we try to build lists organically just by having great content that people are signing up for an ebook or some type of lead magnet that we do. Generally, just buying email lists is not a good idea. Scraping emails is probably not a good idea either. And certainly now, the industry changes. What we could do in email marketing 8 or 9 years ago, we can't do today. But back then I would scrape sites, and I would, find email lists all over the place. And of course, when you email those lists initially, you have a huge bounce rate. You may get a 40% bounce rate on an email list of 100,000 people. And when your email provider sees that, they're going to probably ban you. But the cool thing is, once you figure out how it works, I could say, okay, now I have the email list clean. I've got those 40% bounces out of here. I've got all valid accounts. Now I just have to nurture it in a way that I get the interested folks out of this list and down into a manageable point, So So yeah, I think starting out with some of that scraping and email list purchasing got me kicked off more than once. But
Okay, that totally makes sense. Yeah, it was a different time back then, and just thinking of like how I run my email list, where it's like, you know, double opt in. A
yeah,
person has to confirm, and then I'm cleaning the list like every month, basically. So yeah, it's much more precise these days. I mean, marketers abuse everything. That's just what we do. So
yeah, it is. It's funny because at Human Proof Designs, when we do the same thing, we have opt-ins, and if we don't hear from you after a certain amount of time, we clean you off the list, and we just want to keep people who are relevant and interested. And so our list may be relatively small compared to when I was blasting out huge volumes to a city to sell training classes. Now that it doesn't work because this technology has gotten too good. The filtering is out there now to filter out those types of emails. I mean, I probably look in my spam, and 90% of the email volume I get is sitting in spam. So it's really hard to get in someone's inbox. You've got to have a relationship with them, and you have a lot better chance nowadays.
for sure. So take us to like how you met Dom and were introduced to Human Proof Designs and that sort of process. Very interesting. I've known Dom for a few years. We started around the same time. So yeah, I'm just curious how all this took place.
Yeah, so I've been looking for another opportunity. I'm always looking for an opportunity. I was looking for an opportunity for probably a year and a half, and so I had contacted FE International, which is a real popular online business broker, and let them know what I was looking for. And so they started to send me leads on, businesses that were up for sale, different opportunities that would come up. And they, got on like their early bird list. I'd know about some of these things before the general public did. And that was great. But, you really have to wait for the right opportunity. So it took me a year and a half of every week, probably looking at 2 or 3 opportunities. And some of them I knew right away this was not for me. And others, did a little bit of research and work into it before I, decided it wasn't for me. So, it takes time, but I didn't want to just jump on the first thing. And I've seen that happen with some folks who have gone out to FEI or Empire or some of the other and snatched up a business because they're looking for something. But I would just tell people, wait, take your time. The right opportunity will come up. And so it took me about a year and a half. There were a couple that came up that I was really interested in during that year and a half. And I, kind of took my time. I'm going to think about it. And I spent a week or two. By the time I got back to FE and said, I want this business, they said, sorry, it's already gone. It's already sold. So, you got to take your time and find the right business, which is what I did. I spent a lot of time, but you also have to be ready to move if you find the right opportunity for you. So yeah, Human Proof Designs was actually listed with the brokerage FE International. That's how I came to know Dom and Human Proof Designs. And so that was last year, latter part of last year. And so I spent some time learning about the business and working with Dom and just kind of understanding what was going on with the company. And then, we took it from there.
Okay, cool. And I'm pretty sure you can't answer much of this, so I'll ask it in a general way so you can bow out very gracefully. So for people that are interested, because I know there's some folks that are like, how much was the selling price? I won't ask you that, by the way. And just in general, I'm not going to ask anything around that. But can you talk about some of the general aspects of like a deal like that? So like, what were some of the things you were concerned about? And then I know you worked with Dom. Like, what do you think some of the things maybe that he was concerned about so that you can make the transaction happen?
Yeah. Yeah. So something like this is, when we're looking at, especially with Human Proof Designs, we're buying and selling businesses and working with folks every day, and mostly in the affiliate marketing model. There it's a little bit easier because you usually don't have a large expense, recurring expenses, staff and overhead and all of those things that need to be accounted for, as well as income verification is typically easier in some of those types of businesses. So if there's a due diligence period that you go through to kind of understand what the business is doing from a revenue standpoint, how the operations are being run, every aspect of the company really. And so we spent that's honestly, it took, I think, 5 months from the time I submitted an offer for the company to when we closed. So it was a lot of work, and I'm sure Dom was glad to reach that closing day, and I was too. But you really have to spend a lot of time in due diligence going through everything. And, there's some lessons learned, I think, for both Dom and I as we went through that process. And, I think one of those is, and if any, people know Dom, he started, I believe, in 2013 and then kind of grew the company over a number of years. And, he didn't come from a background of running big companies, so it was a learning experience for him as well. But if you're out there looking to sell a business, one thing that makes it much easier and it doesn't take 5 months to get through due diligence is make sure your record keeping is really, really good. Because a lot of entrepreneurs and folks like me, we just love, I love technology, but I hate the accounting part, But if you've got a business today and you're thinking about selling it in a year or two from now, you've got to have your accounting in place. You've got to have documentation of your processes operationally, all those things you need to start thinking about today, because that's what was a real challenge with Human Proof Designs. Really was. It was a great company and great people, but when you're buying a company, of course you're buying that revenue, and so you've got to document it and you've got to have good documentation of it. And so that was certainly a big challenge in that process. But yeah, it took probably 5 months, and I learned a lot through that process.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's I imagine, a big transaction, to say the least. So congratulations on the acquisition, of course. And as we're starting to wrap up here, funny thing, quick digression, right? I told you earlier, Bryon, that we go on tangents sometimes. So as we were trying to do this call, Bryon couldn't hear me for 10 minutes or something. So eventually we got Skype working, but we're running a little bit short on time, so we're going to finish up. But I'm sure we could have you on for round 2 sometime in the future, Bryon. So before we go on, obviously people can find you at Human Proof Designs and stuff like that. But I'm curious about any future plans that you may have coming up with HPD. I know when there's new leadership in place, sometimes some new things happen. So what do you got going on?
Well, we do. We have a lot going on, and so I'll kind of give you the spill on a few things that are coming. Number one, so many of you guys know that we offer content services. So we help write article and blog content, and we've done that for a number of years. So we're changing that model a bit. We've hired some new staff, as well as changed some of the roles, and we now have dedicated content managers that actually start today. And so when you come to Human Proof Designs and you want content, you're going to work with a single person, and that single person is going to be responsible for understanding your needs and goals with the content on your site and what you need to help grow it. They're going to write outlines for that. And then they'll be responsible for coordinating with our writer staff and our editor staff to get your content developed. And then they'll be responsible for actually going out and getting that uploaded and formatted to your site and selecting the right images and all of that. So they're going to get to know your site really well. So those who have worked with us in the past, maybe you've had experience working with a researcher, and then someone else who's doing the writing and editing management, and then someone else who does uploading and image selection, all these different processes. And one thing coming from a technology background and kind of the DevOps world over the last few years is optimization of a process. And when you have lots of handoffs, there's a lot of opportunity for wait times. There's also a lot of opportunity for error and mistakes to happen. And so reducing the handoffs as much as possible is one of the goals we've had. And so all of our teams are kind of moving to that model to really have a dedicated content manager in this case for you. Some of the other things we're bringing out end of this summer, we're going to be offering video services. So we're going to be doing article trailers, which are like 90-second intros to an article, to a topic or review, whatever it might be, that you can blast out on YouTube, blast out on your site, blast out on social media. You know, people love these little 90-second videos. It really gets them engaged and they want more. And so they're going to click over and you're going to drive traffic via those 90-second trailers, as well as going to do full-on like 5-minute videos where we take an article that you've written or that you already have, and we have in a professional video recording studio with actors who actually will convert your article into a video, and then we'll professionally produce that, and you can release that video on YouTube, your site. You know, Google does take into account video as part of the rankings of your content, and so we find that a mixture of video is important on your site. We're getting the guest posts. We've been doing that privately for our SEO clients on those packages for a number of years now. So we've built a large database that we've done through just organic outreach. And so we're now going to make that publicly available outside of our SEO clients. And then the biggest news is, you know, we've been involved in affiliate marketing and websites for many years, have a lot of expertise in that. But we're getting into some new business models, which is going to be exciting. And we're kind of taking a spin on some of those. You've probably heard of, you know, some of them like drop shipping and local lead gen and all kinds of different business models out there. But a lot of those don't leverage what we've learned in affiliate marketing around how to build organic traffic and not just rely like on ad spends to generate traffic for these different business models. So we're taking a hybrid model of some of what we've done and seen really work for our customers and really able to build big businesses and expand that into a couple other business models that we're going to be offering the end of August. So some cool things are coming.
Very cool. Very cool. So you have dedicated like content managers to help clean up the process, potentially, or I guess not potentially, but you have video services that are going to be rolling out too.
Yeah.
And then like different business models. So someone could buy a done for you drop shipping site or lead generation type site.
Yeah. And they'll be in the human proof design style and utilizing some of the things that work really well in affiliate marketing. There's been a number of studies recently, and we have one customer over in the UK who huge e-commerce site selling jewelry and related items, and you know, they have it down to a science. Here's what we need to do from an ad spend standpoint. Here's how many Facebook ads and so forth. Here's the click rates. Here's what we're going to make if we spend X dollars. But as soon as you turn that off, you're not making anything, you know. And so what a lot of e-commerce providers are finding is that if we can build organic traffic and organic content to our site, we can reduce that ad spend, and we have kind of an ongoing stream there. And so that's becoming, I think, more well known among some folks within the e-commerce world, and just something that that we've developed a model around that we're going to start offering our customers.
Right. That's great. I mean, it's funny. The business models are so close together, and a lot of us know each other and stuff. But it's like you can use ideas from other places, in your other business model, and like it may work. Like the keyword golden ratio. In fact, that's one that I hear from people occasionally, to use the keyword golden ratio to get organic traffic to their e-commerce site. And they're like, hey, it works for us too, not just affiliate marketers, which, I mean, that's
Yeah.
what we knew the whole time. So yeah, anyone can use it. It's awesome.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, Bryon, thanks a lot. Looking forward to hearing more from you and about those services specifically. So I appreciate the time, and everyone be sure to check out Human Proof Designs. So thanks, Bryon.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Doug. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks a lot to Bryon and Human Proof Designs. Again, we'll put links for everything so you can check out some of the stuff that they're offering over at Human Proof. And one thing I'll mention is they do have a podcast at Human Proof Designs, and I've been on the show, I think, at least 4 times. There may be a new episode coming out soon, and we just have a good relationship, right? We have a good like crossover audience, and we know a lot of the same people. So if you haven't checked out the Human Proof Designs podcast, do check it out, especially my episodes, right? I mean, a lot of this is just me talking about myself or other things that I'm interested in, and you should check out my episodes. All right, so I'll leave it at that. Thanks again, Bryon, and we will catch you on the next episode.